Good morning, everybody. My name is Evan Farr. Welcome to today's webinar. Today, I am going to be talking to you about how to protect your assets from the catastrophic cost of nursing home expenses, talking about the ultimate secret to avoid going broke in the nursing home. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself for those of you who don't know me. My name, well, I already introduced myself. I think my name is Evan Farr. I know my name is Evan Farr. I am a certified elder law attorney, one of about 500 in the country. I'm also a member of the Council of Advanced Practitioners. That's part of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, which is, there are about 100 of us in the country. I've written 4 best-selling books in the field of elder law. I've been named by a top lawyer for 10, 15 years and all of the top rating groups. And that includes Super Lawyers, Washingtonian Magazine, Northern Virginia Magazine, Best Lawyers in America, Martindale-Hubbell, Avo. I'm also the creator of the Living Trust Plus asset protection system, which is what we're going to be talking about today. This is an asset protection trust that I created and licensed to attorneys all around the country. And this trust is the ultimate secret to avoid going broke in the nursing home. And that's what you're going to be learning about today. If you have questions during today's webinar, please feel free to email me at evan@farlawfirm.com if you're watching this on Zoom. If you're watching on Facebook Live, feel free to put your comments in the chat or comment box, and I will answer those on Facebook after the webinar. I will not be answering questions during the webinar because I want to try to keep this to an hour today. That's the goal here. And a lot of questions that people have tend to be too complex or too fact specific to answer in this type of quick online webinar anyway. But we do offer free initial personal consultations to anyone. So if you do have a question that doesn't get answered, your other option is to schedule a free consultation to meet with me, and I'm happy to answer all of your specific questions. Before we talk about the Living Trust Plus, the ultimate secret to protecting your assets in the nursing home, you need to have a basic understanding of what trusts are. Most people understand that a revocable living trust is a tool to avoid probate. Most people understand that a will puts your estate through probate after death. Sometimes probate is called the nightmare of probate because it is often a nightmare. It differs by state to state, but in many states, including Virginia, Maryland, and DC, where I practice, probate really is a very complex, very expensive, very time-consuming process that you don't want your loved ones to have to go through if you can avoid it. So that's why people doing regular estate planning do what's called level 2 planning. This is what we call it in our practice, which uses a revocable living trust to protect your assets from having to go through probate after death. Revocable living trusts are wonderful tools. We do thousands of them a year, and they work very well. But, well, let me say one other thing about revocable living trusts, why they're good. The revocable living trusts not only avoid probate in Virginia or Maryland or DC, wherever you live, but also multi-state probate. A lot of people own real estate outside of their home state, maybe a second home, a rental property, a vacation home, rent or an inherited property. These properties are going to have to go through probate in the state where they are located if they're not owned by a trust. Trusts also provide financial privacy as compared to wills, because wills are part of probate. They are public records, and everything that gets filed along with probate becomes a public record. So as good as revocable living trusts are, what's very important to understand is their limitations. Revocable living trusts do not protect your assets from any of your creditors. They don't protect your assets from lawsuits, and they don't protect your assets from the biggest creditor that we all face, which is the nursing home. Because the revocable living trust is revocable, that means you can revoke it, you can take all the money out. And if you can take all the money out, so can your creditors, again, including the nursing home. A nursing home and Medicaid, if you apply for Medicaid, which is what the Living Trust Plus is all about, will look right through your revocable living trust, and they will consider those assets to be assets owned by you. And there is absolutely no asset protection in connection with a revocable living trust. So why are the reasons that people want protection from the expenses of long-term care or nursing home expenses? The reason is because it's expensive. Nursing homes, you can see, cost upwards of $170,000 a year. The average in the DC metro area is about $12,000 to $14,000 a month. I have 10 here. That's because we also have a Fredericksburg office down in the Fredericksburg, Virginia area. It's more about $10,000 a month. But when you come up here to the DC metro area, really $12,000 to $14,000 a month is the going rate. So you're talking about $150,000 to $170,000 a year for nursing home care. Assisted living is a little bit less expensive, but the trust that we're going to be talking about also does not protect assets in connection with assisted living. This is a Medicaid asset protection trust, which only protects in connection with nursing home care, or in some states, in-home care, if somebody needs the nursing home level of care. There are a lot of reasons people wind up in nursing homes or needing the nursing home level of care. Stroke is one of the leading causes. Over 600,000 people a year suffer a stroke. In our country, every 45 seconds, somebody has a stroke, very often leading to paralysis or partial paralysis, leaving people bedridden and in nursing homes. Alzheimer's disease, of course, is a huge player in what causes people to go into nursing homes. It affects 1 in 9 people age 65 and older, and 1 in 3 people over age 85. Parkinson's disease is also alarmingly common. Approximately 1 million Americans a year are diagnosed with Parkinson's, and the average age is pretty young, at only 60. Of course, we all know that it can attack even much younger people. Parkinson's leads to a type of dementia in most cases, and to shutdown of the body, and almost always to nursing home care towards the end, which could be for years. Osteoporosis and osteoarthritis are diseases of the bones. Of course, they make for weak bones, brittle bones. They put people at a high risk for falling, and when people with these diseases do fall, they are at a high risk for breaking their bones. A broken hip, a broken femur, these are some of the main reasons that land people in nursing homes. Nursing home expenses are so catastrophic that 70% of individuals become impoverished within a year of going into a nursing home. That was a study found by AARP. A study by Unum Insurance, a big insurance company, a few years back, found that 46% of long-term care claimants were under age 65 at the time of disability. So this is not just a problem facing the elderly. This is a problem facing people of all ages. And just in our office, in the past 3 years, we've had over half a dozen clients in their 40s and 50s wind up needing nursing home care that we've had to do asset protection for and get on Medicaid. So this is a real problem that affects people of all ages. Only 10% of Americans have long-term care insurance, so that is not a solution. But the good news is that for the 90% of Americans who don't have long-term care insurance, there are still ways to protect your assets from probate and, most importantly, from the expenses of long-term care. And to do this, you need to do Medicaid asset protection. We break this into 2 different levels of planning, level 3 planning and level 4 planning. Primarily, today's talk is about level 3 planning, which is the Living Trust Plus. But I'm going to touch on level 4 planning. And the goals of both level 3 and level 4 asset protection planning are to protect assets in order to qualify people for available benefits. The benefits are primarily, as I've been mentioning, Medicaid, which pays for nursing home care and in-home nursing home level of care, at least in Virginia and DC. Maryland does not currently have the in-home benefit, but we're working on that. There's also a benefit we help people get every day called Veterans Aid and Attendance. This is a smaller benefit, but for wartime veterans who qualify, this can be quite a valuable benefit, especially to help pay for home care or assisted living when you're not sick enough to be in a nursing home. And the reason we protect assets is to protect the dignity and quality of life of our clients. For most people, Medicaid asset protection is not about preserving an inheritance for their children. In fact, for most of my clients, their children are better off financially than they are. Some people, that's not the case, and they really do want to protect an inheritance for their children. But for most of my clients, the reason they're doing Medicaid asset protection, and particularly the Living Trust Plus, is so that if they do wind up in a nursing home on Medicaid, they can have their care paid for by Medicaid, which they've paid into their whole life through their taxes. And the money that has been protected in the asset protection trust can be used by the family, by a trusted adult child typically, to make life better for you, the client who is in the nursing home, for the elder that is my client. For instance, the money in the trust can be used to pay for things that Medicaid does not pay for, like replacing lost or broken eyeglasses, hearing aids, dentures, new clothing, paying for a cell phone plan, buying a new iPad if it gets broken or missing, purchasing audiobooks or whatever is going to make life better for your loved one in the nursing home, for you if you're the one eventually in the nursing home. The money can even be used to hire a private sitter to be with you in the nursing home. If you wind up, say you've had a stroke and you're paralyzed and bedridden and you can basically do nothing for yourself. Well, having a private sitter would be very nice, someone to help change the channel on the TV, turn off the TV if you're ready to listen to music, and put in your earbuds and choose your favorite music or your favorite audiobook. Help you get to the bathroom. Maybe you're able to use the toilet, but you can't transfer yourself. You can't get out of bed yourself. So a private sitter can help you get to the bathroom every couple of hours so you don't wind up sitting in dirty diapers for 5 or 6 hours a day, which is sadly the fate of many people in nursing homes who don't have a sitter or a family member with them during the day. This is the core reason driving Medicaid asset protection. It's all about protecting the dignity and quality of life of the elders. We're also, when we're dealing with elders, many of them are married, so we're often protecting the income and the assets for the healthy spouse so that that healthy spouse can continue to live their decent quality of life and be there for the nursing home spouse. Very often protecting the family home is a crucial element in asset protection. Many people have a family home. It may have sentimental value. It may simply be a roof over your head, but sometimes it's a roof over the head for you and some other family members, maybe children, maybe siblings, maybe a child who has come back home to help care for you and sold their home, and now that's the only roof over their head. And as a parent, you don't want to wind up in a nursing home and see your house have to be sold in order to pay for nursing home care, and your child, who may have left the workforce to take care of you, and now may have no easy way of supporting themselves and no easy way of putting a nice roof over their head. So for many people, protecting the family home is of great importance. Also of great importance is to understand the ethics of Medicaid planning. What we do, what we elder law attorneys who specialize in Medicaid asset protection do, is legally and ethically protect or shelter assets. We do not hide assets. In fact, hide is literally a dirty 4-letter word in our business. There is not, hide implies not telling Medicaid about assets that you have, not reporting them. We would absolutely never do that or help our clients do that. Everything we do, completely legal, completely ethical. And to give some more context to that, it's just like income tax planning. Everybody right now, it's around tax time, depending if you're watching this live. If you're watching this later, it may still be tax time since taxes were extended due to the pandemic. But what does everybody do around tax time? Well, they try to maximize their deductions, maximize their tax credits. Why? In order to get the biggest tax refund you can possibly get. If you prepare your taxes, taking all your legal credits and deductions to get a tax refund, are you trying to cheat the government? Of course not. That's just the American way and has been for, ever since the founding of our country. Nobody wants to pay more taxes than they have to. In fact, our country was founded on, paying unfair taxes to England when we were still a colony. So planning your estate, planning your financial affairs, your legal documents to get money back in the form of Medicaid payments, it's no different. Because who do you think pays for Medicaid? Again, it's your taxes. Medicaid is a federally and state funded program. You pay, it's not like Social Security where there is a trust fund specifically set aside for that. It's just from your general taxes. But we all pay a lot of general income taxes to the state and federal government, and they chip in 50% each to pay for Medicaid. So you've worked your whole life. Your spouse, if you're married, has perhaps worked his or her whole life. Your children are working. Everyone's paying taxes in your family and contributing to Medicaid. In fact, the two largest line items in the federal budget and the state budget in normal years are Medicaid and education. So a huge portion of your taxes go to fund Medicaid. Doing smart planning to get some of those Medicaid dollars back to help you if you wind up in a nursing home, no different than doing smart tax planning. The difference is that there are 40 or 50,000 accountants in the country. And on top of that, you know, 10 or 20,000 tax attorneys. And on top of that, all the H&R blocks and Liberty Tax Services and AARP tax services and TurboTax, and lots of ways, lots of people to help you do taxes, lots of ways to do taxes and find all of the deductions and credits you're entitled to. But the bottom bullet on this slide, and I've already mentioned, explains that Medicaid is very poorly understood because there are only about 500 of us certified elder law attorneys in the entire country. And so it is very hard to find someone like myself who understands the system and understands how to level the playing field and obtain Medicaid through proper Medicaid asset protection. And when I talk about leveling the playing field, let's look at that second to last bullet, where I explain that Medicaid asset protection is necessary to overcome our country's discriminatory health insurance system. What I mean by that is that our health insurance discriminates against people who get the wrong type of illness or injury or disease, ones that result in the need for long-term care. Let me give an easy example. Let's look at two people, John and Joe. John has a brain tumor. Joe has Alzheimer's disease. John, what does he have? He's got a brain tumor. It's cancerous. It's something in his brain that's not supposed to be there. What treatment does he need as a result of his disease? Well, it's cancer. So he needs chemotherapy. He needs radiation. Eventually, he's going to need surgery. And guess what? His health insurance is going to cover all of that. Yeah, he'll have out-of-pockets and deductibles that he has to meet, but if he's got good health insurance, he's not going to go broke. His family's not going to go broke. They're going to cover all of the care he needs because of this cancer disease that he has. If his cancer comes back in a year or spreads to a different location, guess what? Health insurance is going to pay for all those treatments all over again. Even if only even if the best result is that John's going to live a couple extra years from a result of this health care treatment, his health insurance is going to pay for it. Joe, on the other hand, with Alzheimer's, what does he have? He's got things called plaques and tangles in his brain. It's not a tumor, but it's foreign stuff that's not supposed to be in the brain, very similar to a brain tumor. But our health insurance has not yet figured out how to remove those plaques and tangles. And therefore, his health insurance is not going to pay for his care. And when he ultimately needs the ultimate care, which is help with his activities of daily living, which is help with bathing and dressing and toileting and feeding himself, then our discriminatory health insurance system is going to say, sorry, Joe, health insurance doesn't cover the care you need as a result of your illness, because what you need is considered by our country long-term care. That's help in an assisted living or nursing home with the activities of daily living. Well, why is that fair? Why do two people with things that aren't supposed to be in their brain that are causing them to be sick wind up with two completely different results? Why is John's family completely protected because he has good health insurance, but Joe and his family have to go completely broke? When I say family, there's this thing called filial responsibility, where if a parent goes broke, nursing homes will come after the children and look to the children for payment. That doesn't exist in most states, but it does in many, including Virginia. Why is this fair? I submit it's not. It's a completely arbitrary and unfair system. And in fact, in many parts of the civilized world, their health insurance does not make this distinction. The public health insurance program covers, or the private health insurance covers long-term care as well as health care. In our country, this is probably never going to happen. It's a very political issue. And we will probably always have this bifurcated system of healthcare and long-term care. But again, it's arbitrary, it's discriminatory, and what we do is legally and ethically help people overcome this unfair system by leveling the playing field so that somebody who gets the wrong type of illness, like Alzheimer's or a stroke or any type of dementia that causes the need for long-term care, that just because they got the wrong illness or injury or disease, they shouldn't have to go broke to pay for the care that they need. So I mentioned there are only about 500 of us certified elder law attorneys. The reason for that is because Medicaid is the most complex area of law in our country. There's a pretty funny quote, couple funny quotes. This one's from the Supreme Court. And this is the one case on Medicaid that made it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court called the Medicaid laws an aggravated assault on the English language, resistant to attempts to understand it. I can tell you this is true because, and that's the reason there's so few of us that understand Medicaid and can help clients through this process. Another great quote is from the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is one of the circuit courts directly under the Supreme Court. This happens to be a case that arose out of the Virginia federal courts. The Court of Appeals wound up calling Medicaid one of the most completely impenetrable texts within human experience and dense reading of the most tortuous kind. These are two wonderful quotes from the two of the highest courts, the highest court, and one of the highest courts in the land, the highest, brightest legal minds in our country, explaining the complexity of Medicaid and explaining why there are fewer or around 500 of us certified elder law attorneys. To become certified, to give you an idea, it's a 5-year process to go through, finishing with a full day specialized bar exam. And the last result as far as pass rate that I heard was about a 20% pass rate. I think the average is somewhere to 20 to 30% range, which is why it is so difficult to get certified in elder law. Let's talk about what benefits cover. The main benefit we're talking about today is Medicaid. And as I've said, long-term care Medicaid covers nursing home care. And it's important to understand we are talking about long-term care Medicaid here. There are other types of Medicaid. The other most common type of Medicaid is health insurance Medicaid. Completely different animal. That is a welfare program for low-income people. Long-term care Medicaid is not a welfare program for low-income people. In fact, I call it middle-class Medicaid because it's really for the middle class, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But long-term care Medicaid, besides covering nursing home care, it also covers home care. I hinted at this earlier. In Virginia, it covers, in general, up to 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. DC, even better, covers up to 17 hours, 7 days a week. Maryland, unfortunately, right now, there's no in-home Medicaid, but the elder law bar is working on that. In some parts of Virginia and in DC and in some parts of Maryland, we have what's called a PACE program, which is an all-inclusive program for the elderly. And this wraps up your long-term care with your health insurance. The long-term care component is delivered in the form of adult daycare. So there are PACE centers in some areas of our states and the DMV that will pick people up in the morning through the door service, take them to the daycare center, and bring them home in the evening. During the day, they'll provide all their meals and all their medical care and the supervision and assistance with activities of daily living that are needed. Why is long-term care Medicaid middle-class Medicaid? Because it's available to anyone who meets the eligibility criteria. This is not for poor people. This is not a welfare program. This is a program that is simply based on meeting the eligibility criteria. And there are basically 4 eligibility criteria. Those are, you have to be medically in need of the nursing home level of care, whether that's in a nursing home or at home. As for your income, I mentioned this is not low income program. This is for middle class people. Your income simply needs to be lower than the cost of your care. So if you're in a nursing home that's $12,000 a month, unless you've got income of more than $12,000 a month, you can get Medicaid. Very few people have that kind of income. Most retired folks are on Social Security, and the most that is $2,500 to $3,000 a month. Some people have a pension, maybe with Social Security and a pension, you're making $5,000 or $6,000 a month. You're doing great in that scenario as a retired person. Some people have a military retirement, they're even making more. But bottom line, even if you had $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a month of income, which very few people have, you can still get Medicaid. The general rule being that if you're a single person and you wind up in the nursing home on Medicaid, your income is going to have to be paid to the nursing home. Medicaid will pay the difference. For a married couple, though, we can shift some or all of the income from the nursing home spouse to the healthy spouse. Sometimes we can do that without going to court. Sometimes we do that by having to go to court. But in either case, we can shift, again, some or all of the income from the spouse who's in the nursing home to the healthy spouse still living in the community. Medicaid looks back 5 years at gifts. When you file for Medicaid, they ask you, have you given away any assets, such as to an asset protection trust, in the past 5 years? And if you have, they are going to penalize you. They also look at gifts to children and charities and any other types of gifts. They penalize you based on what's called the penalty divisor in each state. In the DC metro area, it's roughly about $10,000 a month, meaning if somebody gives away $500,000 and then applies for Medicaid, let's say 4 years later, they put $500,000 into an asset protection trust, apply for Medicaid 4 years later, which would never do, they're going to be asked, did you give away any assets in the past 5 years? The answer is yes. $500,000 went into the asset protection trust. You're going to be hit with a penalty of about 50 months. Not quite 5 years, but that penalty could be over 5 years. If you put $1 million in the trust and apply it after 4 years, you're going to be hit with a 100-month penalty period, much longer than 5 years. And that starts when you applied for Medicaid, which in my scenario was 4 years after you put the money into the trust. So the goal of the asset protection trust we're going to be talking about in a minute is to put the assets in the trust and not apply for Medicaid for 5 years. We'll talk more about how this works, obviously, in a few moments. The other key criteria for Medicaid, and this is where lawyers such as myself come in, is your countable assets have to be below $2,000. Using the Living Trust Plus Medicaid Asset Protection Trust is a way to get your countable assets below $2,000. So now let's delve into how the Living Trust Plus works. Why is this the ultimate secret to avoid going broke in the nursing home? First of all, it's called the Living Trust Plus because it protects your assets from probate plus lawsuits, plus Medicaid and nursing home expenses, plus veterans aid and attendance if you're a wartime veteran. To be a wartime veteran, you have to have served active duty for 90 days with just 1 day during a period of wartime. This is a diagram of how the Living Trust Plus works, and this is going to start to unravel the secret of how this trust works and why this is so popular, not just with my clients, but with the 50 plus attorneys around the country to whom I license this trust. So we start with this diagram in the top left corner. It shows your house, your money right now, unprotected. It's unprotected from anything and everything. We follow the first arrow to the right. It shows these assets going into the Living Trust Plus. Once these assets are in the trust, they are immediately protected from probate and lawsuits, as shown by the first bullet inside of that box. That's what the chains around the house and the money are showing, is the immediate protection from probate, immediate protection from lawsuits. The protection for the veterans benefit happens after 3 years, and the full protection for Medicaid occurs after 5 years because of the 5-year look back we already talked about. And the veterans program has a 3-year look back. You'll see the burgundy arrow pointing from the house to you. So assuming you're the one creating this trust, you, which includes your spouse if you're a married couple, you are going to have full use of the home. You're still going to live in your home. You're still going to pay the taxes, the insurance, the upkeep, the mortgage if you have one. You're still responsible for the house. You're still living there. Nothing really changes. Let's look at the taxation of this trust. In the middle of this graphic, you'll see in yellow, it says the income is taxed to the settlor. The settlor is you, the person who created the trust, the person who can also be in control of the trust as the trustee. You'll see there in the bottom left corner, it explains you can be the trustee. You can remain in full control of this trust. That's one of the secrets to why this trust is so popular. You do not have to give up control. Many people erroneously assume that an irrevocable trust means you give up control. Well, with this irrevocable asset protection trust, you do not have to give up control. So as far as the taxes, if there are assets in the trust, financial assets that are invested and spinning off interest and dividend income or capital gains income, all of that income is taxed to you as the settlor. If there's a home in the trust, it's your primary residence, the trust preserves this $250,000 capital gains exclusion. That's a $500,000 exclusion for a married couple. That applies if the residence is sold and you lived in it for 2 out of the past 5 years. If you die owning the property, the trust also preserves what's called the step up in basis on death. So you may have bought the house for $70,000 back in the 70s or 80s, and now it's worth $600,000, a very common scenario. If you die owning the house, the tax basis to your children is going to be stepped up upon your death to $600,000, what it was worth at the time of your death. Therefore, when your kids turn around and sell it for $600,000, they're not going to owe any capital gains tax. Incidentally, and the reason we don't gift houses directly to children, the reason we use this trust, if you were to gift that house directly to your child, they're going to take over your tax basis. So if you paid $70,000, you give the house to the child, not through the trust, they take over your $70,000 cost basis, meaning when they go to sell it for $600,000, they're going to have a capital gain of $530,000 taxed at about 20%. That's over $100,000 in capital gains tax that is avoided by using the trust as a way to transfer the property to your children upon death and protect it from Medicaid during your lifetime. Important to understand at the bottom of this slide in the green writing that what doesn't go in the trust, your retirement accounts, your IRAs, your 401ks, they can't go in the trust. The I in IRA stands for individual. And unfortunately, IRAs and 401ks and 403bs and other types of qualified retirement plans simply can't be owned by a trust. So they either have to stay outside the trust, or some people will cash out some or all of their retirement account money, paying the taxes, of course, but that may be worth doing because taxes are at an historically low rate right now. And some people will do that and put the after-tax amount into the trust in order to protect it. The other thing explained on the bottom is that your primary checking account stays outside of the trust, and your retirement income, your Social Security, your pension, that continues to come to you outside of the trust. So you're still in charge, you still own and are in complete charge of your checking account and your monthly income. You're still going to get all that. You're still going to pay your bills and your day-to-day financial needs as you're doing now. There's really no change to your day-to-day financial activities as long as you're living off of your income and not having to dip into savings each month. Now, if you are someone who does need to dip into savings, then there is a way to do that, and that is through the back door of the trust. So going back to the diagram here on the top, we have on the left side, we showed the house and the money going in what I call the front door. This is a one-way door. Once the money and the house go in, that door gets locked and the money can't come out. But there is this back door to the trust. And through the back door, the trustee, which again can be you, can make unlimited distributions at any time to the beneficiaries of the trust, typically your adult children. Hopefully you have at least one trusted adult child to whom you can make a backdoor distribution and trust that they will turn around and give that money back to you if it's needed for you to manage your monthly living expenses. That money can also be used for your benefit. So a backdoor distribution can go to a child. The child could turn around and pay the bills for you. Excuse me, I have a cough from allergies, nothing to do with the coronavirus, of course. This backdoor will come into play at other times, and I'll talk about that more in a couple examples, or at least one example I'll give in a few moments. But it's very important to understand that the only way to get money out of this trust is through that backdoor. So once you put the money in the trust, even though you can be the trustee and you can be in control of it, meaning you can decide how to invest the money, you can decide when to sell the house. If you sell the house, the money from the sale goes back into the trust, into some account in the name of the trust. You can decide how to invest the money. You can change the investments at any time, moving them between accounts and different types of investments. But even if you're a trustee, you cannot take money out of the trust and give it to yourself. You cannot use the money in the trust to pay your bills directly. I can't emphasize this enough. The only way money can leave the trust is through that backdoor distribution, where the money goes from a trust bank account to one of your beneficiaries of the trust. Again, typically your adult children. Hopefully you have at least one trusted adult child. Otherwise, you're probably not going to do this trust. Although it doesn't have to be a child. It could be a niece or nephew, could be a younger sibling, could even be a close friend that you trust. And the beneficiaries of the trust, we call these your lifetime beneficiaries. These don't have to be the people who are going to inherit the trust assets upon your death, because along with this trust, we do a will. In fact, we do about 15 different documents. And for a married couple, about 25 different documents as part of this, what we call level 3 planning. One of those is a will. And in the will, you can change the beneficiaries of the trust. The will simply says that you exercise what's called a power of appointment to change the beneficiaries of your trust. And that is why you can change the beneficiaries of your trust at any time. There's also a way to change the beneficiaries during your lifetime, if that becomes necessary. So another explanation of how the trust works, to go in a little more detail. There's no change to your checking account. There's no change to your retirement income, which continues to come into your checking account. There's no change to your ability to live in your home and your duty to pay all the maintenance and expenses in connection with your home. You get immediate protection from probate and lawsuits. You get protection after 5 years for Medicaid and after 3 years for the veterans pension. And most importantly, and the reason this is such a valuable trust, and the reason why this is the ultimate secret and the ultimate way to protect your assets from Medicaid, is because you remain in control. You remain in control because you're the trustee if you want to be. So again, as I said, you can change the investments, sell the real estate. If you're not the trustee, you can change the trustee at any time. And you can change the beneficiaries, the ultimate control over the trust. And again, you can do that during your lifetime or upon death by signing a new will. And you have indirect access to the principal through that back door that we talked about. So this is an incredibly powerful tool for everyone, unless you're very close to needing nursing home care, and then you need level 4 planning. This is the for people over 65, this should be the first thing they think about when they talk, when they're thinking about estate planning. They should be thinking about doing this level 3 planning using the Living Trust Plus as opposed to a plain old revocable trust, which just protects your assets from probate. For a lot more information about the Living Trust Plus, I encourage you to visit our website at farlawfirm.com. When you first go there, if you haven't been there in a couple of days, a box will pop up inviting you to sign up for our newsletter and get my free Medicaid asset protection ebook. As soon as you sign up for the newsletter and click submit, you'll get redirected to the page where you can download the ebook. You'll also have the opportunity, if you wish, to get the hard copy of that book. It's a different title, but it's the same book, the hard copy version. So you have the option to get that for free by just paying shipping. You also have the option to get one of my other best-selling books. There's 4. There's only 2 available that are free through this offer. The second one is the Nursing Home Survival Guide. That's for people who may have a loved one already in a nursing home or about to go in a nursing home, or maybe just a few years away from needing nursing home care. So I encourage you to go to that website and get the book, read the book. If you don't want to read the whole book, just go to the website and search for the Living Trust Plus. There's several pages that talk about the trust, that show that diagram that I just showed you, and a couple of other diagrams, because there's actually 3 different versions of the Living Trust Plus. I've only talked about one of them today for simplicity, but there's another one for people who own rental real estate, and there's another one for veterans that when we're trying to get the veterans benefit, we will sometimes use a 2-trust system. And the newsletter, if you're not already subscribed to it, you'll find a lot of valuable information. We actually send out 2 newsletters a week, and of course you can unsubscribe at any time if you're not delighted with the content. But most people, find our newsletters extremely helpful and educational. What some other elder law attorneys say about me, you'll find on the website. If you go to download the ebook, you can find testimonials like this on that website, and also on Google. If you search Google or other rating sites, you'll find lots of folks talking about me. Some lawyers, some mostly clients that have been extremely happy with our services. If you're not already familiar with who I am and what our firm does, I'd encourage you to check out our reviews. How much money can we protect with the Living Trust Plus? Well, we can protect 100% of your assets if they're in there long enough. So it's for the veterans benefit. It's the assets just have to be in there for 3 years in order to protect the assets. For Medicaid, they have to be in there for 5 years to get 100% protection. Well, what if you don't make it to 5 years? This is a common question. What if somebody thinks they might need nursing home care in 3 years? Well, we still can get incredible asset protection benefits by using this trust. It all depends on how much money went into the trust to begin with. Let me give you an example of a typical Northern Virginia, DC, suburban Maryland client who does the Living Trust Plus and doesn't make the 5 years. Let's call this client Jane. Jane is a widow. She comes to me after her husband dies to do the Living Trust Plus. Jane's assets are $800,000 in total. She has a house worth $400,000. She has a brokerage account with Merrill Lynch that has $300,000 in it, and she has an IRA with $100,000 in it. Now, As far as her income, she has just Social Security. It's roughly $20,000 a year from Social Security. So not a lot of income, but she's doing okay. She's making ends meet with her income and a little. Her retirement account has been doing well, and even though she's been taking distributions, it's been staying roughly at $100,000. So Jane comes to me, we do the Living Trust Plus, we put her house and her brokerage account into the trust. She decides she's going to put to not put her IRA into the trust. And the reason for this is her tax bracket at $20,000, she's in the 12% tax bracket. And if she were to cash out the IRA, that would bump her up to the 22% tax bracket. So that's an extra 10% hit, which is big. So for someone like that, taking money out of an IRA to put into the trust doesn't make sense. I mentioned earlier, a lot of people do take money out of IRAs and retirement accounts to put into the trust. And for many people, that makes a lot of sense. And that's because of using tax bracket management. We can, I'm looking for my tax brackets here. Here we go. For people, depending on their income now, taking money out of a retirement account might only bump them into a slightly higher tax bracket. For instance, I'm looking at the 2020 federal income tax brackets. Looking at a married couple, for instance, the 22% bracket goes from $80,251 up to $171. And then the 24% bracket goes from $171 all the way to $326. So if a married couple with, say, $81,000 a year of income, or let's say 86, just to make the math easier, they have $86,000 of annual income, this married couple. They're already in the 22% tax bracket, which means all distributions from their IRA are going to be taxed at least 22%. If they have the opportunity to go all the way up to $326,000 of income and only pay an extra 2%, at the 24% tax bracket. So the difference between 86 and 326 is, I'm off the top of my head, I'm getting $240,000. I believe that's correct. That couple could take $240,000 a year, this year, next year, getting almost $500,000 out of their IRAs, essentially tax-free. I mean, they're going to have to pay roughly 23%. Because they're going to still be in the 22 and 24% bracket, but they're only paying an extra 2% on a little bit of that, which is essentially nothing. In order to get the extra protection, paying that extra 2% is really meaningless. So, but again, back to this scenario. In Jane's case, she does not put the IRA in the trust. She keeps it out because she doesn't want to pay the extra 10%. So Jane is a healthy 70-year-old. We think that she's not going to need nursing home care for 5 years, but in our scenario, let's say she has a massive stroke in 3 years and she needs nursing home care. What do we do? Are we out of luck because we didn't make the 5 years? Of course not. We simply have to pay privately for her nursing home care for 2 years. And then we'll be past the 5-year look back, and then we can apply for Medicaid. How do we pay for the 2 years? Easy. For the first year, we use her IRA. That has $100,000 in it, plus her income of $20,000. That goes to pay the nursing home. Let's assume she's in a nursing home that's $10,000 a month. There you go. She's paid $120,000 a year to cover her care for the first year. And incidentally, the money coming out of her IRA is going to get a medical expense tax deduction offset against it, which is why she's not going to owe any taxes on that IRA distribution. But now, and the second year, there's no more IRA. That's gone. How do we pay for her second year? Again, easy. The trustee of the trust, let's say it's her adult son, John, he makes a backdoor distribution to himself as a beneficiary of $100,000, and he turns around over the course of the next 12 months and pays that money along with mom's income to the nursing home, thus paying the $120,000 for year 2. We are now past the 5-year look back, and what's left in the trust is protected. And what's left in the trust is her house. Let's assume nothing's changed in value, so she still has a house worth $400,000 and a brokerage account that did have $300,000, but she used $100,000 through the back door to pay for the second year in the nursing home. So there's $200,000 left. So what's left protected in the trust is $600,000 out of the original $800,000 that she had. That's 6/8 of her assets, or 3/4 of her assets, or 75% of her assets. No matter how you look at it, protecting 75% of someone's assets is a great result. Because even under level 4 planning, the typical rule is we can protect 40 to 70% of someone's assets. And that's in a crisis planning mode for a single person. And speaking of level 4 planning, I just want to touch on this briefly. If you have a loved one in the situation where they are already receiving long-term care or about to receive nursing home care, then you need level 4 planning. Under level 4 planning, we have approximately 24 different strategies to protect assets. These are all crisis planning strategies. For a married couple, we can protect 100% of the assets. This is under current law. For a single person that we're getting on Medicaid, as I just mentioned, we guarantee we can protect 40 to 70% of the assets. Sometimes it's 100%. And again, there's about 24 different strategies. Some of those strategies work in some circumstances and allow us to protect 100% of the assets for a single person. But again, we can always protect 100% for a married couple. This type of planning is much more complicated, much more expensive than level 3 planning. The reason I highly recommend people do level 3 is because it's much less expensive, and it protects, especially if you're a married couple, it protects the assets for both of you. Whereas level 4 planning only protects the assets for one spouse at a time. Level 4 planning can wind up being 5 or 6 times more expensive than level 3 planning, where you get actually much better protection with level 3 planning. So planning early really is advantageous, but just wanted you to be aware of level 4 planning in case you have a loved one already in this scenario. Why doesn't everybody do this type of planning? A lot of people think their estates are too small. That's just total nonsense. We do the Living Trust Plus for people with as little as $50,000 to $100,000. If that's all they have, that's what they've worked their whole life to save up, and they want to protect that, we're happy to do that for them. So most people do not have an estate too small to protect it. Too many choices. This is a big excuse. People don't know whether to do a will or a trust, and now I've given you this extra trust to think about. Well, the choice between a will and a trust is usually easy, because a will goes through the nightmare of probate. A trust avoids probate. But it is sometimes a difficult choice whether to use a revocable trust or the Living Trust Plus. But that's where we come in. We help people make that choice every day. Ultimately, it's your decision what type of trust to use, if anything. But we help people navigate those choices every day. And And the other choice that many people are concerned about is what attorney to go to, because in this DC metro area, there's more attorneys per capita than any other part of the country. Hopefully, I've answered that dilemma for you today by getting to know me and realizing that when it comes to this type of planning, there is no choice. I'm the only attorney in the DC metro area that does this type of planning using the Living Trust Plus. And hopefully you'll see that I'm a decent guy, and my goal is to help clients and the elders. And so hopefully it won't be too hard a choice to figure out what attorney to go to. The Medicare myth. This is a big one. A lot of people think that Medicare will pay for their long-term care if they wind up in a nursing home. This is untrue. Medicare will pay for rehabilitation that takes place in a nursing home after someone has been in a hospital. Typically, they have to be in the hospital for 3 days or 3 midnights. Then they go into a nursing home for short-term rehabilitation. Short-term is up to 20 days that's paid for by Medicare. Then there's potentially another 80 days where Medicare will pay a partial amount, and many people have Medicare supplemental coverage, which will help pay for the remainder of the balance for the 80 days, assuming they actually get 80 days of rehab, or the 100 days of rehab. Not everybody gets the full 100 days. Many people get, just a few weeks or any number of days between 0 and 100. But the bottom line is Medicare does not pay a penny for long-term care. It only pays for short-term rehab after you've been in a hospital for 3 days. Quality of care. This is a big myth also. Many people think that the quality of care they get in a nursing home that takes Medicaid is going to be lower than a private pay nursing home. Well, first of all, there's no such thing really between private pay and Medicaid nursing homes. Almost every nursing home in the country, including our area, takes Medicaid. There's a couple that don't. There's a couple that cater to only retired military officers, and they have too much income to get Medicaid anyway. And then there's at least one nursing home in Northern Virginia that I'm aware of that used to take Medicaid and Medicare, but they were terminated because their quality of care was so bad. So they got cut off from being a provider. So you wouldn't want to go there anyway. But the reality is almost every nursing home takes Medicaid. They have to, because people in nursing homes run out of money to pay privately. And nursing homes have very limited ways of discharging people. Basically, they can't do something called an unsafe discharge. So nursing homes, as a general rule, are forced to keep people, and they want to get paid something. So that's why they take Medicaid. And federal law and state law all prohibit nursing homes from discriminating against the quality of care based on how someone is paying for their care. And the reality is that the staff in the nursing home, they don't know who's on Medicaid and who's not. There could be 2 people in a room, one's private pay, one's on Medicaid. They've got the same caregiver providing care for them, caregivers, and they're getting the exact same quality of care. It makes no difference that one is on Medicaid. What does impact the quality of care is the nursing home. Now, of course, there are different quality nursing homes. They are rated on a scale of 5 stars, like everything these days. If you search NH for nursing home, compare, you'll find the top result in Google is the federal government's nursing home compare website, where you can look at all different nursing homes by zip code or location, and you can see how they're rated from 1 star to 5 stars. So yes, there are different quality nursing homes, but again, almost all the 5-star nursing homes, I'd say 99% of them take Medicaid. So it's not there's not going to be a diminished quality of care because you're on Medicaid. The biggest excuse that people make for not planning is denial, saying, I'm never going to go to a nursing home. I've told my son to take me out back and shoot me if I ever need to go in a nursing home. I hear that probably once a week by clients. And of course, not a good idea, because you don't want your child to go to prison, which is what will happen if they take you out back and shoot you. The reality is everyone may wind up in a nursing home. And I'm preaching to the choir, because the fact that you're watching this webinar means that you understand that you might wind up in a nursing home. Almost nobody wants to go in a nursing home, and I'm sure you don't want to, but if you have to, I congratulate you for not falling victim to denial and understanding that there is a reality that it might be an evil necessity, and taking this step today to learn what you can do to protect your assets from the nursing home, doing ideally the level 3 planning while you're still healthy, and hopefully have 5 years before you will need Medicaid. I applaud you for listening to today's webinar and educating yourself. I encourage you to take the next step, which I already mentioned, is to sign up for our newsletter at farlawfirm.com. Download my free Medicaid Asset Protection ebook. Even better yet, give us a call to schedule a free introductory meeting. We do offer free initial consultations to anyone in the DC metro area, Virginia, Maryland, or DC. Those meetings can be by phone, by video conference, or in person. We are still open for in-person visits if you're interested in that during the pandemic, of course, with proper distancing and masks. As an extra incentive for those of you listening to this webinar today, if you call and schedule an appointment today, just mention that you've watched this webinar, and we will make a note in our system that you are entitled to a $500 discount off of any of our levels of planning. We do have an intake form that needs to be filled out. It's very simple and quick to fill that out before your appointment. Our client service team, whoever answers the phone, will send that to you, we'll email that to you to fill out before the appointment. And with that, I want to thank you for attending. Again, if you have questions, please either comment on Facebook if you're watching this on Facebook, or simply send me an email to evan@farlawfirm.com. I will try to answer all questions. To schedule your free initial consultation, call us either at 703-691-1888 or at our toll-free number, 800-399-FARR. And again, if you call and schedule that appointment today, mention that you watched this webinar, and we'll make the note about the $500 discount. Again, please encourage you to sign up for our newsletter and download and read the free ebook. Get the hard copy book if you prefer. Just pay for shipping and handling. Again, thank you all for coming. I hope this has been educational, and I hope to see you all at some point, either live or virtually, and hope to be of assistance to you all. Thank you for coming today, and enjoy the rest of your day.